Welcome to Grief Sucks Life After Loss, where we talk all things grief. Thanks for being with us today, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, Lisa. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
You are a holistic life coach, and I would imagine that life events happened to get you to where you are and doing what you do today.
Yeah, that's right.
So, could you share with us how you got there or what led you to this career?
Yes, yes, it totally changed the trajectory of my life. And so, my brother and I always talk about how we won the parent lottery. We were very fortunate and we know that. So I grew up in a really loving home. In 2005, my husband at the time and my two daughters that were 10 and 11, we moved to the UK from Seattle. So you always kind of worry about those phone calls, right? I had not lost a grandma and an aunt, but like I was young and so I was dreading these phone calls. And in 18, the first phone call came in January. I lost my niece who suffered from a long illness, but we didn't think that she was going to pass. She was only 32. And
Wow.
yeah, and a week later, then I got another call from my mom that said that my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer. And that for me really kind of the world opened up and swallowed me whole. It was like the earth just opened and I quit my job and I moved to Seattle to take care of my dad, but also my mom. They'd been married for years and years and years. So, and 7 months later, he passed away. And in between that time, I had lost friends' children. And then after my dad passed, I moved back to the UK and a few months later my mom came to visit and it was strange. She'd come off the plane. She was without my dad. It was
Yeah.
we tried to make the most of it, obviously. Some of the things she wanted to do in the UK. So they had been here numerous times, but it was just different. And so we went and we traveled around the UK and she saw my girls and had a great time. And then she stayed for 2 months. And then when I hugged her at Manchester Airport, I was trying to stay strong and um she was crying and she walked away and I was really heartbroken because again she walked away alone and I did not know that would be the last time that I would hug my mom. She passed away in her sleep several months later.
Goodness.
We talked every day, and so she wasn't answering her phone, she wasn't answering Facebook Messenger. I was like, oh my god, like, so I call my brother and I call my mom's best friends, like, when was the last time you saw mom? And so I just had everybody go over there, and then I was just
Yeah.
waiting for that phone call. So my parents passed away 14 months apart. And, I went back then and buried my mom. And 2 months after my mom passed away, I got a call in the middle of the night that my 24-year-old son in law, Jack, had passed away from a fall. And
Oh
my
my
daughter
goodness.
was there. Yeah. So you think, so I remember saying someone going, like, oh my God, like before Jack died. And I said, I can't get any worse than this. Like and it did. And I was like, what? Am I just literally cursed? Or like what is happening? And that was absolutely the worst because we lived 2 hours away and it was the middle of the night and I just wanted to get to my daughter. And, her
Yeah.
and Jack had been together for years. Like they'd, been together since they were 16. It was really basically her first boyfriend.
Mhm.
And she just literally lost her soulmate in a split second. So between 2018 and 2019, I lost 12 loved ones through death. And that to me, complex and compound grief is just really hard to navigate. Like, where do you
Mhm.
go? What do you do? Like, how do you survive this? I am pro therapy, so I went to a bereavement counselor. She was absolutely fantastic and held that space for me. And then I hired a life coach after a year and a half. And then and then like I went to sound healing, I went to Zumba and yoga and like chiropractic and massage. Like I saw mediums. I did everything that I could think of to keep going. So
Well,
that's really
a lot of people don't know how to navigate one major loss, let alone so many within a short amount of time. It's just we had my husband, my mother-in-law on the same day, and then we had 3 months later was my mother-in-law's husband. So it was like just those alone were a lot. And not to mention everything else that was we had major breakups of people that had been in our life forever. It was just so much going on. I'm like, what do you do?
exactly. I feel like, it's that is so much to carry, isn't it? And
Mhm.
I feel like when I talk to people, it's like that. It's not just one loss, it's usually numerous losses. And it's not even just the loss of loved ones who've passed, it's all the other losses, right? So, loss of identity, loss of a home, loss of a job, then the pet dies. And then, and it just is compound, 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 one thing right after another. Like I said, I really hadn't experienced much loss. And then it was all of a sudden, it was like every time you put your head up, it's like, boom, you get hit again. And so, yeah, it is a lot to navigate and it's a lot to carry because I don't know if you found this, but you carry the grief of your own grief, but then you're carrying the weight of the grief of others as well.
Yeah. Well, especially when you have kids and you're dealing with, immediate family members. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that is a massive weight to carry. And it's one of those, I know you can relate that there's just no mom fix for that. Like you couldn't fix my daughter and my older daughter who loved Jack and loved my parents. It was just there was nothing that I could do to
Not at
fix it
all.
and make it all better.
Nope. You kind of well, for me, it was kind of leading by example, I guess, because it was my kid's first major loss. And like you said, you can't fix it. You can't do anything about it at the end of the day, but try to help them navigate and show them how to get through it and how not to get through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's part of the thing that I talk about and share and like educate people on is that of course everybody grieves differently, but when you're supporting loved ones, like what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, and then when you leave their presence, you then work on your own stuff. Like then it's time for you to deal with and work through your own pain. That's why, for me, having a third party person like my therapist was key.
Yeah, and therapy works for a lot of people. I tried it. It really wasn't for me, but I did go through the more self-healing. Like I took a life coaching course and it helped me more than anything. And the meditation and just all the basically self-help things that you could soak in to try to mentally get you back right.
Exactly. That's what I did everything. What else is there to do? Looking around and trying on things and seeing if it fits. So for me, my counselor was great because she knew I was very action oriented. I didn't want to just sit there and talk and talk and talk and talk and then leave the room just talking. I really wanted things to do. I needed something to do, like some sort of task or homework and
Right.
yeah, and that for me was she was great in that. But I always say to people, like, just, yeah, try it on and see if it fits. Try something and see if that works. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. Just set it aside and try something else because grieving And compound grief is exhausting.
Absolutely. So, at what point did you decide that you wanted to become a life coach and help others?
Yeah, I mean, like you, it was one of those things where it started. Was doing so much self help, so much personal development. I've always been addicted to that anyway. I used to work in a helping profession in the States. So it's always been something, and it was always modeled to me by my parents. My parents were they served the community, they served children, they were coaches of every sport there was. And kids felt safe and it was an open door. So I grew up with that. And it was this I worked in corporate, and it was during COVID, and I'm typing away, and I swear I heard, like, "Lisa, you need to be a life coach," right? And I was like, "I don't even know what that is." I had to Google it. I was like, what the hell is a life coach? Like, what is that? Google it, and I'm like, "Huh, that sounds interesting." So then I did a deep dive into that. And then I thought, well, if that's the direction I'm going to go, then I need to hire one. So then I hired a coach, and she was fantastic. And, when I went through my certification and accreditation and all that, and I knew personal development was a big thing because it's just action oriented stuff. That's just what I do. It comes easy to me. I can help other people do that. But the grief coaching and that was like on the side, and it was niggling away at me. And I'm like, no, like, nope, I don't want to go there. It's not the direction I want to go. I don't want to be steeped in grief and loss and be that person. And am I healed enough? Like, it was just, and then it was really this idea that actually, do you know what, Lisa, this isn't about you. It's about others. And your experience is there for a reason. Not that I think that this is like, I'm so glad that happened because now I found purpose, but it's more about creating a life of passion and purpose around your pain. And for me, then it was like I almost was called to do this thing. So then I went down the route of grief certification and being a grief educator, and started doing that. So I kind of have the two branches, but it is literally the losses that changed the trajectory of my life because a year after Jack, I also went through a very amicable divorce after 28 years. It just happens, right? Like
It
you were
does.
saying
I
about
mean,
your friend, it shines, grief changes you at the core, at the very cellular level. And you start to look around at your life and you go, you know what? Life is really short, it's really fragile. And like, I'm unhappy and you're unhappy and I gotta go. And he's like, yeah, okay. I mean, it was
yeah,
just so, when I think of loss, when we talk about loss, there's just so many different types of loss.
yeah, it's crazy, and I I think I'm constantly saying it. I think a lot of people don't realize sometimes that they're grieving things. When you get divorced, there's grief. Whether it was, agreed upon or one person or another, you had planned on a life together and you had a plan, and now that's no longer the plan. And that's okay. Like you said, life is short. There's no reason to live a life that you don't love, even though you made those commitments. People change. Like you said, grief changes you. And I am a true believer that everybody should be happy in their life and do what they want to do. I just told my daughter the same thing this morning. She's going back. She's a nurse. She's going back to school. And she's like, well, I'm really not passionate about this. I'm like, why are you going? Find something you're passionate about. Do what you're doing now and then find something you're passionate about. There's no reason to spend all this money and time for something that isn't going to be worth it in the long run, that you're not going to love. Life's just too short to
Yeah,
live like that.
it's so true. It really is. And I think, with your losses, and it shines this light on those areas. And it also gives you a different perspective, a different mindset. Everything shifts. And not for everyone, and certainly not right away. I mean, it took me a while, but at some point, it was like, okay, my kids are feeling like they were adults and moved out anyway, and they weren't surprised that it came. But I didn't want to add that to them after Jack. So it was, I waited until I felt like we were kind of at this place where it was
Mhm.
okay to do that. And for us, it was the best decision that was made. But then I think one of the things too is that you had mentioned about friendships and stuff. I mean, that is the other thing. I had a couple really close, like my best friend and some close friends who were such an amazing support. And anybody who is toxic or even just energy draining vampire, I just set him on the shelf for a while and or I kicked him off the shelf. Like it was just, you have to protect your energy, especially when you're so deep in grief. So that was another change. And
I got real good at boundaries. Really, really good at boundaries.
yes, yes, yes. And not everybody does. And it's
Mm-mm.
like, that is so like, it's so crucial to do those things, set the boundaries, protect your energy, and whatever energy you have left. But not everybody does that. So it's so important.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel like they can't do that. At the end of the day, you're in charge of your life. You're in charge of what you want. If those people are toxic, they don't belong there. Period. Why keep them around if they're toxic to your life? And a lot of people thrive off of toxicity and drama, and in my personal life, I just don't have time for it anymore. It's just not worth it. I don't have the energy. I'm not going to waste my time in it. We're all about making memories and having a good time over here.
Exactly. Yes, like my mom was very wise, but she would say to me like, "Don't spend your money on stuff. Spend your money
Hmm.
making memories. Go
Yep.
travel, do the things that make memories." And then after my dad passed, she's like, "I'm so glad we did all of those things that we did when we were healthy and, able to do it." And it's just it just sticks with me. I'm like, "Yep, that is what needs to happen. Make those memories."
Yep. My husband was always really big on making memories, especially from the time the kids were little. So that was something that we stuck with, was like, you know what, we're still doing road trips and we're still making memories and we're still having all the shenanigans in our life and just anything to make the memories because they're important. Those are the important things in life.
Absolutely, and really honoring him,
Hmm.
right? And that's the other part that I always think of, like just honoring my parents, honoring Jack by sharing talking about them, sharing stories about them, and, as doing the things that I was taught to do, or like you said, the things that you were influenced, that this is their legacy and you want to continue on with it.
Yep. So you have a podcast as well, correct?
Yes. Yes, I do. Again, that was birthed out of this. That was birthed out of all the it's
Before I got
amazing,
on with
isn't
you, I'm
it?
like, before I got on with you, I'm like, who the hell do I think I am just running this podcast? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just talking to people and hoping that it helps somebody.
Yeah, and it does because I think they just go, "Yeah, whatever, dogs barking in the back," whatever it is, it's just is the reality. But yes, I started a podcast called Because We Love Finding Meaning After Loss, and I started it a couple years ago, and really just interviewing, people like yourself or people like professionals and others who have experienced any kind of loss, and then what that did to them, and then what they did as far as their healing modalities, and
Hmm.
then obviously how people can find them because um has so much power in stories. And if you've gone through this dumpster fire, to be able to help somebody else, at least you can go, oh, at least it was helpful for somebody else who might be facing something very, very similar.
Right. Yeah, because of course we all feel alone in that and feel like we're the only, like you said, with all your losses, I'm sure you thought, who else goes through this? Like who else's life is like, 'cause it's a
Yeah,
lot. I know we did, we're like,
it's a lot.
we had a double funeral, that shit's not normal. We had this. Whose life
So
is
not
this? Who else
normal.
does this?
Yeah, and sometimes I think, do you float on the top looking down going, "What the hell, that poor person?" But then you're like, "Oh, wait, it's like
Right,
my
it's
life."
me.
Yeah, it's me. And I think that that's the thing I always say to people, like, it's one of those things where I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but also the idea that I think comparing grief is really dangerous as well. So
Yes.
I had a lot of people going, "Oh, like my dad died, but it was nothing compared to what you've gone through," or "This happened, but nothing compared to what you've gone through." I've
Yeah.
said it to people, like people who've lost children. I'm like, "Oh, but God, like that, there's nothing worse than that." And so we do this thing where we compare grief. I think to make it make sense, something has to be we have to formulate it. We have to put it in a little box, like we have to grade it. It's just this human thing that we do, but
Or
actually
sometimes
any loss is
sometimes it's just because we feel like we have to say something to that
yeah, yeah,
person.
fill in the blank.
So,
Yeah,
I think that's a big part of it, when the reality is that person really, I don't know, for me, you don't really wanna hear "I'm sorry," like, there's really no words to say, and so I think that's part of it as well, is they want to say something, they just don't know what to say, to the
yes.
person that's dealing with all the things.
Yes, of course, because we don't want our loved ones to hurt. We don't want them to be in pain, but they are, and they will be. And that is the reality. So I part of the kind of grief education part is I get asked this question so much. Like, well, what like my friend's dad died. Like, what should I say? Or what should I do? Or what should I not say? And so I put together like a little guide book, like a free one, but something because out of my own experience and the experience of others, because it is one of those really difficult things to navigate as the supporter. Like, I don't know what to say or do. And so I always tell people, like, some of the do's. I mean, if you think about like all the stuff you do on a daily basis, like do the laundry, walk the dogs, take the kids to school, clean the house, all of those things that you go to the grocery store. But like as a widow, you've just lost your husband. The last thing you want to do is go to the grocery store and have someone go, "How are you today? Oh, have a great day," and see people. And
Because I have lost my shit in the grocery store.
there you go. That
And I will say that one of the biggest yeah, and one of the biggest things was it seems like a lot, but, people bringing dishes, heat and eat dishes, or groceries because, like you said, you don't wanna go out. First of all, you're not even thinking about eating. So, I don't know that we woulda ate much had nobody brought groceries or, dropped off eat and eat food, because that was one of the most helpful things ever. And then, the first couple times I went in the grocery store, I think I lost my shit. It's the little things that somebody saying hello to you, or you don't want to people. You don't want to people. You don't want to pick up something that reminded you of that person. It's just so many little triggers.
it is so true. And I think that's the part. I was interviewing a gal who had lost her son, and one of her friends for a year and a half went grocery shopping for her. Every
Wow,
time she went so she go to the grocery store. I'm going to the grocery store. Anything you need? Gave her a list. A year and a half she did that.
that's awesome.
I know. And these practical things. When my dad was dying, it was difficult. Obviously, it was a very painful time. And this woman that was a friend of my parents came every other day and did the laundry. So she'd take like the sheets and the blankets and the towels with her. And then 2 days later, come back with new ones and take the old. She did it for 7 months. And
Wow.
it was amazing that, and it was those things. And I know when one of my friends here, one of the 12 I lost, was they lost their son. He was 20 years old and he died in a car accident on my dad's birthday. And their only child, they were just, the three amigos. And what do you do with that? Like, how do you support that? So I got this meal train together. I don't know if they ate the food, but the point was that we don't want them to even have to think about
Right.
cooking or anything. So even if it's just dropping it at the door and like you said, sometimes there's just no words, right? So but there are people, I don't know about you, but I've experienced, thankfully very few, but so many people hear things like they're in a better place or
Uh-huh.
time heals all wounds. Like just give it a year or two. Like you're young, you'll find
Yeah.
somebody else. Like these things that people say that actually it's like, it's best not to say anything. Of course, I'm going to just give you grace because, like, I get that you're trying, but just don't. Like, don't say these things.
Yeah,
And
because
that's what I
they're
tell people, like, don't do that.
yeah, and it's just like, you don't wanna hear, "I'm sorry, you didn't do anything." Like, like so the wording is hard. I think it's more the actions that can help. Even being somebody who has lost, I still don't have the words. I am personally very odd in death. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to comfort very very well. I'm very horrible at it. But like you said, it's the little things. For me, I had a couple friends that would just show up and sit on my couch and not say anything.
Yep.
And
Yep.
some days that was the greatest thing at all, to just have somebody there just in case, but not to say anything at all.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. I know for me, and because we handle grief so differently and we support people differently, it is one of those strange things that, like, when my dad died and I came back from the States, I just closed the curtains and just like hermited for like 6 weeks, which isn't normally like me, but I like talked to my daughters and like that was and my ex-husband. That was it. But then when my mom died and Jack died, like the curtains were I needed my people so desperately to be there. And it was just strange because I was surprised that I reacted differently to different losses, but I just went with it. And I think that's the thing that people need to just give themselves the permission to grieve however it is, whether they fumble it up or they need to grieve however they need to.
Yeah, whatever works for them. Like I said, some of us go
Mm,
down this path where we're just trying to self-help and heal us, and some people, need to lay low and not speak to anybody for a while. And like you said, it's not even just how we deal with grief, period. Sometimes it matters on the person of how we deal with that.
exactly, I remember, so on the self-help part and that kind of personal development, like, this is why my counselor was good for me because I'd just be like, I thought I had to just sit in this just sit, like, let it all this shit just wash over you, right? And you have to
Yeah.
muddle your way through, and you have to fight, and you have to work at it, and you have to, like, whatever. And she's like, Lisa, sometimes it's okay to just not. Like, sometimes it's okay to just go, "Not today." Like, I don't have the energy to grieve today. A memory comes in, "Nope, not today." Or I don't know how many times I put my hoodie over my head, watched Netflix, ate popcorn. Like, it was just right. I'm just gonna take a nap. I'm just gonna watch just anything on something funny on Netflix. And that was a great thing for me because I wouldn't have even thought that that was okay. I would have thought I was just being lazy. I didn't, don't get up and do something.
Yeah, it's day to day. It's could be different every day. We just really don't know. We just all navigate it the best way that we know how, and there's no right or wrong. And I hope that people don't let anybody tell them that there's a right or wrong, because I know that there's a lot of people, those people that don't know what to say. Like some people like to tell people how they should be doing it. Or for instance, maybe if they went through something similar, they're like, "Oh, well, I did this, so you should be on that path." And that's not it. That's not it at all. We all do it on our own time, in our own way, and it's okay. And some days we may feel like we're batshit crazy for the way we're dealing with things, and that's okay too. Life is messy, and that's all right. We get through it. It has to be how you deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember not that long ago, my oldest daughter goes, "Yeah, mom, you were pretty brutal." I must have been. I mean, I know that, grief and loss and anger. Grief and anger can go hand
Mm,
in hand. And
yeah.
it was the littlest things, like you said, you lost your shit in the grocery store. I did with some of my family member. I mean, it was like just, and you like, you're already on edge, right? And just one thing can just throw you over. And to just go, do you know what? I know that that's what it was, but I also know I was right in what I was feeling and like not apologizing for it. But could I have done things differently? Well, probably. But like, I just lost both my parents and I just buried both my parents. And then I buried my son in law. So, for me, I think it is really important for people to understand that you guilt and grief go hand in hand, anger and grief go hand in hand. Like there's some married couples there. Like it is very common and normal. And I always say to people, you're not broken, you're not crazy, you are grieving. That is what it is. Let's call it what it is. And that is what it is.
Yeah, and I think just as much as we try to, as we're grieving, give other people grace for maybe the things they say, the rest of the world has to give us grace for the way we behave and react to things because of the things we're dealing with. Um,
Absolutely.
and I think sometimes that's a big thing. Some people will look and say, "Hey, you're losing your shit," like you should be handling this differently, but you got to give us grace as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is one of those things where if you've not really experienced it, you don't quite get it. And you can be compassionate, you can be sympathetic, but like to be really empathetic, like understanding it because you've gone through something very similar. And I think one of the things that is really was really, really important and really crucial and also super light bulb moment for me was when I was going through David Kessler, who's, the grief expert. I went through his certification program and he said, you can fully live and fully grieve at the same time. Like those two things can coexist. So if you're feeling joyful, like you're living, it doesn't mean that you've forgotten about or that you're not fully grieving the loss of your loved one either. So there is this part when you start going through the healing and you start going down the road and some people feel guilty for having joy
Absolutely.
or laughing,
Yep.
but you can do both and they coexist at the same exact time. Because someone said to me, like, well, when does it stop? Like, when do you stop grieving? I'm like, well, how long are they dead? I mean, that
You
is
don't.
how
Yeah,
long
there's
am
no
I
answer.
alive? No,
Yeah, there's
there's grieving and suffering, I think are they're different. So
absolutely.
grieving, you would grieve forever because you lost them for it. But do you suffer? That is a different story. That's a different feeling. That sits differently for me. And so I can fully live and fully grieve and grieve forever, but I'm not
Mhm.
suffering.
Yeah, that's a good point because I think a lot of people go through the feeling guilty of moving forward or just a variety, life changes and you make different decisions after you lost someone. For us, it's because now my husband worked a lot. I took care of the kids. He worked a lot because our plan was, we're going to bust our ass for this many years and then we're going to go live the rest of our life and do what we want here. And after that, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to enjoy life. But I think you feel guilt sometimes of moving forward and being happy. And then you wonder, did they have to die in order for this to happen in my life? I think that's a big one that I sit with. And, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's okay to move forward.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And always think about your loved ones, what they would want for your life.
Mhm.
The other thing that some people say is like they wouldn't want you to cry. Well, just don't listen to that. That's not what I'm saying. What is it that they would want for you ultimately and for your children? Like what would he want for you? And one of the other things that I saw recently was something like, your loss isn't a blessing or a curse or a, any of those kinds of things. I'm going to paraphrase, but it's what happened. It is a loss. It is grief. Now, what you do with that is a different story. But, when people say something like, now you have there's this purpose. Well, I would rather, I'm sure you would agree, I'd rather have all of them back
Absolutely.
than to find meaning. Like, I
Right.
can find meaning somewhere else. Like, so if there was a choice, I would want them all back, but
Yeah,
that's
for
not
sure.
reality. So that's not what's happened. That's not reality. So now what do you do with what's happened?
And sometimes making that choice takes a long time. Finding the new you takes a long time. I'm still trying to figure out life, honestly, and we're almost 3 years in, so it's just part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then something new comes up and navigating that. And, it's been, oh my God, I don't even, I mean, it was 2019 when my mom and Jack died. And I see my daughter who was in a relationship just recently for a while, but it's just hard for her. She's just not,
Yeah.
I don't know that she's necessarily comparing everyone to Jack, but she had the best at a young age. And so her level, which is great because her level of like putting up with whatever is, this is my standard. But watching her life, just who she was before and who she is now is different. Like at the core, Alexa is Alexa, right? But who she was before Jack passed, I've lost that part of my daughter that I'll never ever get back. So we're also talking about, I lost a part of my daughter, and she's resilient and she's powerful and she's doing the things that she needs to do, but that part of her will never ever come back.
No, it's, you definitely lose part of yourself and you become a different person. I mean, you still have some of those, but like you said, your level of, keeping up with and even just getting back into that dating space, I mean, that takes a lot to I'm not there. And to
No,
be
it took
honest
her years. It took her years. Nope, nope. It took her
yeah, and
years. And I mean, she was
not
only
only that,
24 when he died.
it's a scary world. Dating nowadays is a scary world.
Is, I know, and also as a mom, I'm like, "No, let me know when you're there," and, like, I'm back to that,
Yeah.
and she lives with her sister now, and I'm like, "Is your sister home?" Like, because it just is, I always knew that she was safe with Jack. I always knew that she was with him, that he was taking care of her in that sense. And we lost a lot. And you're right. It's a scary world out there. And I'm like, I watch too many crime shows to like
Right.
not to be calm. And I'm like, just message me in the toilet, like in the bathroom. I don't care. I want to know
Yeah, just let me know
you're
you're okay.
okay.
If I call,
Yeah,
at least pick up, say I'm okay.
exactly. Exactly. That's it.
Yeah, when my
Yeah.
daughter, before she got with her boyfriend now, her and her friend, they did the online dating thing. They're like, "This is how we meet people." I'm like, "No, this is not okay." Like, I need you guys to let me know where you're at, who you're going with, like all the info. Because as a mom, you're like, "This is scary."
It is a crazy world. I know. I know. It is. It is. Absolutely. She's got a great picker. I trust her, but I don't necessarily trust the others.
Other
So I'm
people.
like, yeah, I know. So it is one of those things where I saw her. It took years as well before she even decided. And then, of course, everyone was horrible and gross and like weird, like, because she was like, she had never had to do what all of her other
Yeah.
friends had to do, 'cause she was 16 and that was it. That was Jack and that was it. They were getting married and that was it. Um, so yeah, it is. watching her kind of, in this cocoon and the whole butterfly idea and coming out, and she's different.
Mhm.
She's new. She's just the pieces have been put back together differently, and yet we always laugh because she is brutal, like, she has this face on her, like, if I mean, and she always has, but definitely after losing Jack, it's like she has no like, her BS detector is there, and she's just like, "Nope," and so she just doesn't waste any time in her life because she knows how fragile it is.
Yeah, you learn that through experiences. You learn what you
Yeah.
wanna put up with
Yeah.
and what you don't, and pushing out quickly is a good thing.
Yeah,
Nobody has
yeah,
time for all the
yeah,
bullshit.
that's definitely her, yeah, it's definitely her, and that's with, friendships and whatever, like
Yeah,
jobs and yeah, just doesn't have the just yeah, she just is like, "Yep, boundaries," and here they are, so
that's a good thing. Not always bad.
mm, nope, nope.
So if anyone would like to reach out to you, um, for some life coaching, how would they reach you?
Yeah, so I mean, my website is holisticlifecoaching.org.uk, and I can be reached there. And I am also on Instagram at holistic_coach_Lisa, and they can find my Facebook page, Holistic Life Coaching with Lisa Marie. But yeah, the website you can find me, and be happy to have a chat for anybody. It's a hard thing to navigate. And so I always say, like, it's grief is a lonely road, but you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will link all of those in the description as well, so everybody can have that easily clickable. And before we finish up here, is there any advice that you would like to give anyone that's going through anything similar that you have gone through?
I just think, as we said, is just the permission to grieve how you grieve. And like, be really, really, you hear it a lot, like, be kind to yourself, but there's truth in that. And, release the expectations that, oh, I should be better by now. It's more damaging. So yeah, just be super, super soft with yourself.
I agree. Well, Lisa, thanks for being here with us today, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation today. If you would like to join us on Facebook, you can find us at Grief Sucks Life After Loss. We look forward to seeing you again.